Okay, hi, welcome back to another video. So as you have seen from the title and the thumbnail, this video is about me reading as many translated fiction books that I can get my hands on or that I'm in the mood for. So I kind of like borrowed a lot from the library, so I'm so sorry for hoarding on to these books. But the first book that I picked up simply because I didn't really go by ratings or anything, I just thought it was a relatively thin book and I really needed a thin book to read in March. I didn't read anything other than this book because I was like in such a bad state. Work was busy, personal life was confusing. Yeah, so I only read one book, which is like, if you know me, I average 4 to 5 books a month. So that is like, I took a hit, man. I took a hit. So yeah, that book is The Second Chance Convenience Store by Kim Ho-yeon. And the story of this is basically centers around this convenience store called Always Convenience Store. The owner is like an older lady. She doesn't really need the store basically. She has her pension. She just like has nothing that she's particularly like fond of wanting to do, so she opened a convenience store, and with all these like part-timers working for her, she's like kind of providing them with a livelihood. Actually, the convenience store is like not even making a profit. It's like operating at a loss, but because she doesn't really see the point of like closing it down, because then she feels that she needs to provide her employees with a good livelihood, she just continues anyway, and I thought that was very cute. And then also we follow the different characters in the convenience store. For example, she has her different like part-timers, morning shift, night shift, and then we also follow this man. This book starts off with the owner of this convenience store losing her purse or her wallet, and then she receives a phone call from somebody in Seoul Station who said that he has her purse or her wallet, and so she goes over and then she sees him like defending her wallet with his life while other homeless people attacking him, and then she was very grateful. Then she brought him to his convenience store to give him like bentos, and it's not even like the expired ones, it's like the fresh ones. And then she told him to come over anytime and she will give him fresh bentos and not the expired ones. But then he's a man of principle, so he still comes by at 8 p.m. when the bentos freshly expire, and then he eats them. So eventually he gets offered a job working for the convenience store in the night shift because she was looking for people anyway. So that's how he ended up working there. So then he goes through like the transformation. So for like homeless, he doesn't really remember what happened to him also, so that's a mystery also. And then he gets a haircut, buys new clothes. She offered him an advance like for him to like find a place to stay and get clothes and everything. He becomes a dependable person in the store. We also see other characters such as there are regulars of the store. For example, an older Ajuma is a frequent regular of this store. Then she has a son also. Then they also like explore the dynamics of their relationship and how her view of the homeless man is called Dokko changes after like spending time with him. Oh, and then it also shows like the interaction between Dokko and the different customers that come into the convenience store, and it's like very heartwarming. So he goes from learning the ropes, and then afterwards he like memorizes all the cigarette brands and things like that. There's also like a female part-timer, I think it's the early shift, and then she also like teaches him the ropes, and then he's like, oh, you have a talent in this, you should like upload these on YouTube. And then that's what she does, and it gets very like well received until the point where I'm spoiling a lot of the book, so like you can skip ahead until like she gets scouted to be the manager of another convenience store, things like that, because she was also trying to find a full-time job while working here. Yeah, I think it's best to just go into this and read it for yourself. I gave this 3.75 because like I can describe things to you, but it didn't really like hit me, but I would still say it's worth reading, especially if you need to read something, which was what I really needed. So yeah, trigger warnings, let me see. Okay, trigger warnings for alcoholism, suicidal thoughts, addiction, abandonment, alcohol, death, pandemic, epidemic, domestic abuse, and violence. Oh yeah, another thing that I didn't really like enjoy from this book was the fact that it was focusing on the time of COVID, like COVID and like a bit post-COVID. And it's not a time that I want to revisit, so it kind of like deterred my enjoyment a little bit, hence the 3.75 rating. But apart from that, it's still a really good book. And let's do rankings after I finish each book. So currently it's only book, so it's just on the list, so I'll come back to you when I read the next book for this video. Okay, hi, I finished reading the next book, which is The Healing Season of Pottery. Yeah, no other reason, just that it was just a random next book that I picked up. So this is Korean author Yeon So-min, translated by Claire Richards. This story is about our main character Jung-min, who suffers from burnout. She's like a broadcast writer, and afterwards she gets burnout from her job, and then also like something that happened that triggered her. So she decided to quit her job. I think she ended it in a very like not very nice manner, like she was screaming as she walked out. Then she moved to this chestnut Burr village, and then afterwards she stumbles across a pottery shop, and then that's where she meets the characters there, the owner, the regulars, and then she starts to learn how to make pottery and clay and things like that. Throughout this story, she also slowly starts to make changes to her life. I think the reason why she started this pottery thing was because she was feeling a lot of inertia. Like at her old job, she was like working 7-day weekdays, and then now she has 7-day weekends. She's slowly trying to like get to do something again, and then she also starts to adopt a cat, and then also learns to cook and things like that. I gave it 2.75 stars because I didn't really feel like the writing style was something that I liked. It just felt very distorted, and then with translated fiction, it's very difficult to tell whether it's because the original writing style is like this or it's because of the translation. So that's something that didn't work for me. And then also in this story, there's some kind of romance between her and one of the regulars there, but at the start he was in a relationship with another girl, so I couldn't really like come to terms with that fact, even though I think it wasn't particularly like cheating. She contributed in some way, so I give it 2.75 stars. Didn't really connect with any of the characters as well, so that's about it. I wanted a DNF actually, but decided to push through to see whether I'll change my mind, but I didn't. So yeah, that's about it for this book, and I'll come back when I have started reading or finished the next book. Hi, I'm back from Taiwan, and I wanted to share about this book that I finished reading during that trip, which is The Amber Glow Candy Store. I believe, based on the author's name, Hiyoko Kurisu, I believe this is a Japanese translated fiction. She was born in Ibaraki Prefecture, Japan, and oh my goodness, this was like a major hit for me. The TLDR, but basically let's go into what this story is about. This story is about, so there is this shrine, and then a bit behind the shrine where there are trees normally surrounding the shrine. Sometimes when humans have a bit of troubles or they need some kind of help, this forest will have like a gap, and then you'll see that there is this street, and it's called Gloaming Lane, and at the very edge of the lane, it is the Amber Glow Candy Store. It's only open between the full moon and the new moon, and along the way you'll see that there are a lot of shops, but they are mostly closed or things like that, and this is the only shop that's open. So in this story, the owner of this shop is called Kogetsu, who is a half fox, and he has different like candies that are there for the customers to like choose and see what they want to get. And so in each chapter we follow a different customer, and we go into like what's happening in their life, what troubles they are facing, such that they are able to see this candy store, and then what candy they eventually decide to buy, and afterwards how it affects them, because the candies have like magical powers imbued into them. It's a very short story. You can see that the text is really big, and the size itself is not very thick, and I really enjoyed it. So if you know me, right, I'm someone who loves Japanese translated fiction, or these kind of like heartwarming stories wherein we follow a different main character throughout the chapters, and then there is like a recurring theme throughout. So an example of that I think is very similar to this would be what you're looking for is in the library. We follow different patrons that visit the library, but the librarian remains the same, and for this case it's the same except it's a candy store. And this one clearly talks about powers and things like that, but in the library, the other book, I think it's more of, I don't think there's power, like magic, but I don't know, I could be remembering wrongly. Both books I really enjoyed. So yeah, you can imagine, right, like on a trip you won't really have a lot of time to read, but I found myself going back to this book every time I had like free time during the trip. So it's like very clear indicator that I was enjoying this book. And also at the end we get to, this might be spoilers, so he won't. At the end we get to know more about Kogetsu's story as well as to how he decided to open this store. And okay, let me quickly talk about trigger warnings. Trigger warnings for injury detail, bullying, grief, mental illness, body shaming, fat phobia, and toxic friendship. Overall, I gave this book 4.5 stars because I really enjoyed it. One major spoiler is that, so in the last chapter we talk about his backstory, right? And it's so sad because basically the whole reason why he opened this store in the first place was because he came to befriend this human called Akifumi, who is like part of this very big confectionery business, family business. And then Akifumi like somehow was able to see him at his store even though he's not supposed to be able to. He comes and like visits Kogetsu every day, and he teaches him how to make all the different candies and imparts his knowledge to him. He just cares for him as a friend. And Kogetsu is like, why is this human so persistent, but he's like enjoying it? And so then something happened to Akifumi in that he got injured, and then Kogetsu realized that Akifumi has been experiencing all these unfortunate incidents quite often. And then he realized that he's drawing these kind of unfortunate incidents, unfortunate energy to him because he has his own like troubles. I should not spoil fully, so he has his own troubles. So Kogetsu wanted to help him, and so he made the candies for him. So the first one was like, he input something in it such that he was able to be honest with his feelings, and then the second one was that he needed to forget about Kogetsu entirely because he had visited Gloaming Lane almost every day, involving himself so deeply with Kogetsu that their fates had become intertwined. If their bond was not cut completely, his unstable spirit would once again begin inching towards the other world, and then he would die. And so he made the decision to put something in the second candy, which made him forget about Kogetsu. And I was like, so sad, his friend. But yeah, he did it for the sake of his friend, and yeah. And also one other thing is that I got to learn more about the different kinds of confectionery in Japan, and I thought that just one minor suggestion or possible way of making the book better would have been like illustrations of the different candies. I mean, of course I can search it up myself, but that's just a minor suggestion. But I really enjoyed it. It's going to be one of my favorites this year, and I give it 4.5 stars. So yeah, I spent 7 minutes talking about this. So I'll come back to you when I started reading the next book. Okay, hi, I'm back to update because I have finished the next book for this video, and that is Will Prescribe You a Cat. And I kind of like shot myself in the foot because I haven't been reading, and then all of my translated books are due like in the coming week, so I have to lock in Will. But yeah, okay, that's besides the point. Let's talk about this book. Oh, and look at all the different cats. So cute, the illustrations. Adorable. Okay, anyway, let's start with trigger warnings first. Trigger warnings for grief, mental illness, animal death, animal cruelty, emotional abuse, abandonment, vomit, and bullying. So this book is actually essentially about how there is this clinic called Kokoro Clinic for the Soul at the end of a cobbled alley in Kyoto on the top floor of an old building. This mysterious clinic that comes with a doctor and the nurse is in this clinic. So this doctor prescribes cats to his patients that come in to share about their troubles, and then you get to see like different cat breeds for each patient and also learn more about each patient's story. So I really like this kind of fiction novel. I think it's mostly Japanese translated fiction, wherein there's a recurring theme throughout all the chapters. So for this one, it was the clinic and different cats as the doctor and the nurse and everything, and then you get to know more about each patient's different backstories. This kind of format really works for me. I just read the Amber Glow Candy Store or something like that, and that was literally the same format, but that one had a bit more magical realism because that involved a half demon. But anyway, this one also has like a bit of magical realism because the clinic isn't open to everybody. You have to want to open that door, and then it will appear itself to you. It will just appear as an empty unit. I hope I put spoiler warning because that is a bit of a spoiler. It's kind of like, I don't think the doctor and the nurse are human. The nurse, I think, is actually a cat, which gets explained later on in the book, but that's just my assumption. And the doctor looks like somebody else in real life also, as well as the nurse, so it's kind of like confusing because we don't get direct answers. Maybe not confusing, but it's more like you interpret it as you will. Ultimately, I gave this book a 4 stars because while I do appreciate the story and the different cats that we learn about, I thought it was a little bit like confusing because we don't get an answer for everything. So it kind of is left unanswered, which I'm not sure because there is a second book. So maybe the answers get answered in the second book, but then I also think it should move on to different patients. So I'm like quite confused. And also what I thought it would be, right, is that because each cat is different and their personalities are different also, I thought that would play into the treatment of the different patients. But I think sometimes it's just like, is the general caring for a cat that kind of soothes them instead of this particular cat themselves. So then it's kind of like, what's the point of prescribing a particular cat when it would just be either any cat would work? Kind of like that. But yeah, I still definitely did enjoy this. 4 stars, and I think I would want to read the second book to this as well. So that's all for this particular book, and I'll come back quite soon because I need to finish reading all the books, right? And start updating my thoughts and also returning them to the library. So this is the last time you'll see this book. Yes. Okay, hi, I'm back because I have since finished another book for this video. So I think I'll stop this video at 6 books, and then the remaining I'll do a part 2. The book that I just finished was Chibiniko Kitchen on this edition, but I think it's also called The Curious Kitten at the Chibiniko Kitchen. And this is Japanese translated fiction, and this is really, really short. Trigger warnings first. Trigger warnings for death, grief, death of parent, child death, cancer, terminal illness, animal death, suicidal thoughts, and chronic illness. And the story of this is that basically there is this restaurant called Chibiniko Kitchen, and it's by the seaside, and it serves remembrance meals. Basically, they are meals that are served to remember and mourn the deceased. So in the book, it also mentions that it has 2 meanings. The food you offered up for someone who was away from home, and the food you put up when mourning the dead. But now it was more often used to refer to the food offered up when someone died. Our story starts off with Kotoko, whose brother died in a car accident, and she always felt a lot of guilt because they were both at that location where it happened, and actually the car was like veering towards her, but then her brother shielded her from the accident, and so he died. So she was like, why did you save me? I was the person that should have died, and then she has a lot of guilt about that. So she has been in grief, and then she heard about this Chibiniko Kitchen wherein, so the legend is that when you eat a remembrance meal at this kitchen, you can hear the voices of your loved ones that have died again. So she sets off for this kitchen, and then the story unfolds from there. She encounters Kai, who is the restaurant owner, or so it seems, and he serves her a remembrance meal. I'm not too sure whether she mentioned what she wanted. No, I don't think she did. So she was quite shocked when the dish came out and it reminded her so much of her brother. And then Kai replied saying that it's because her brother used to frequent this establishment. Like, he used to go fishing, and then he used to really love eating that. So when she ate that, this is like full spoilers for the first chapter, by the way. When she ate that, her brother appeared before her, and then they got to have a conversation. The conversation only lasted for as long as the food was still hot. So when the steam dissipates, then her conversation is over and she cannot see her brother again. And this concept, if you have read Before the Coffee Gets Cold, is like kind of very, very similar, except that Before the Coffee Gets Cold is about coffee, but this one is more about food and remembrance meals. The story continues from there. I really, really enjoyed this. I gave this 4.5 stars. I think my only gripe was that I wished this book was longer, but I saw that it has a second book out already, so I'm not too fussed about that anymore, and I'm gonna pick that up and continue reading. And with all the previous books that I've been reading, for example, like Amber Glow, Candy Store, I really love that we have these kind of like main characters throughout. So for this one, it is Kai and the Chibiniko Kitchen, and each chapter we follow like a different character who is going to eat the remembrance meal, and we learn more about their backstories and things like that. I really like these kinds of stories, and I realized that it seems to be like a pattern for Japanese translated fiction, so maybe that's why I seem to prefer Japanese translated fiction more. And what I also liked about this was that each chapter also has recurring characters, like Kotoko and Kai. They appear again, and it felt like a continuous story. Yeah, I just wish that we had more chapters seeing like the customers with their different backstories, but it's okay. And also, what I thought was very interesting was that Kai cannot see the loved ones that appear, so he doesn't know whether it really works or not, but his customers claim that they are able to see, so he always thought it was like maybe just their own hallucinations or their own wishful thinking. So it's not like he is a fantastical character that has these powers, but it just has a miracle to it. And then we also get to explore Kai's backstory as well, which I really liked, and I just really enjoyed this. And there's also like a possible hint at romance, so I also enjoyed that. Yeah, that's about it. I just really enjoyed this story. Oh, and they also have like the recipes of each remembrance meal that they serve, either recipe or like description of what this food is about. I need to find you the recipe. So for example, this one. I'm not sure if you can see. Like, I cannot cook, so I cannot test whether this recipe is like good, but if anyone reads this and can cook, please try it out and let me know. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. 4.5 stars. And the last book that I'm reading for this video is The Healing Hippo of Hinode Park, whose author wrote What You're Looking For Is in the Library, which happened to be my best book of last year. So no pressure, yeah. I'm currently like this much into the book already. It's also Japanese translated fiction. This book is about the residents of this 5-story apartment block called Advance Hill. At the bottom of this apartment block, there is this children's playground of Hinode Park, and there is this hippo, which is like you just sit on the hippo and you don't do anything. But this hippo is called Kabahiko, and there is like a legend to Kabahiko wherein when you touch the body part that corresponds to the part of yourself that needs healing, you will be healed. So we have had characters who touched his head, his mouth, his ears, his back, and his leg, and then we just see their backstory. We have 5 neighbors, so 5 chapters, I believe, and their respective backstories and what hurts and how they slowly get healed. For now, I don't really enjoy it as much as What You're Looking For Is in the Library, very sadly, but it is still not bad because the way this story functions, right, is like basically they touch the hippo and then afterwards they seem to go through their own character development. So it doesn't really show as strongly to me that they're healing because of the hippo, you know. But What You're Looking For Is in the Library, right? The central theme centered around the librarian in this community library. And it's like a little bit like the hippo, but that one is more of like through their conversations, the books that she recommended to them, as well as the little crochet things that they kind of have done light bulb go off. But for this, it's like it's not coming off as strongly to me, but I'm still enjoying my reading journey with this. I don't think this book rating will surpass this one, but we shall see. And at the end, let's do like a ranking of all the books and my enjoyment of them. So I'll do that when I finish this book. Yeah, okay. Hi, I'm here to close out the video because I have since finished The Healing Hippo of Hinode Park, and let's talk about trigger warnings first. So let me quickly load it up on my phone. Trigger warnings for injury detail, bullying, medical content, toxic friendship, pregnancy, blood, and fat phobia. In the end, I think what I said in the previous clip largely was the same, in that I didn't really have particularly strong feelings for this book. In the end, I gave it 3.5 stars. And all my previous thoughts are the same, in that yes, they all interact with this hippo, and then afterwards the body part of theirs that needs healing is healed, but a lot of it I think is due to like psychological attribution rather than, oh, this hippo really has some healing powers. But I do like that because they're all neighbors in this apartment, right? They are kind of like briefly mentioned in each other's chapters, especially like between this one and the next one. And apart from this hippo being the central theme, there is also another location or character that is like quite central to this story, which is the owner of Sunrise Cleaning, which is the laundry place at this apartment. So I believe the last chapter is about the owner and her family member and their relationship. Yeah, so I definitely wouldn't consider this a favorite as compared to What You're Looking For Is in the Library, but I will continue to pick up more works by this author. There is also an excerpt of this author's next novel, I think, called Hot Chocolate on Thursdays. So I will be reading that sometime in the future as well. So yeah, that's where I will end off this video. Let me just briefly talk about my ratings. So in this video, I read a total of 6 books. So we started off with Second Chance Convenience Store, 3.75 stars. Healing Season of Pottery, 2.75 stars. Amber Glow Candy Store, 4.5 stars. Will Prescribe You a Cat, 4 stars. The Curious Kitten at the Chippy Nickel Kitchen, 4.5 stars. And last but not least, The Healing Hippo of Hinode Park at 3.5 stars. So I believe from the ratings, you can already see my rankings. The only deciding factor is between the Amber Glow Candy Store and the Curious Kitten at the Chippy Nickel Kitchen. Wow, I cannot choose it. Okay, if I had to choose, I think I'll put the Curious Kitten at the Chippy Nickel Kitchen at the top, compared to the Amber Glow Candy Store. Maybe it could be because it's the book that I more recently read, but also I think I really liked the progression of this story, because the Amber Glow Candy Store is like individual customers, and then we end off with the owner of the candy store's kind of origin story, and so that one felt more like separate, but this one is more like a continuous story. Yeah, I think that's where I'll put it. I mean, both of them have the same rating, but if I had to choose. So yeah, I think I'll end off this video here, and I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to my channel to see more of such content, because I'm already reading the books for the part 2 of this video, which is Lost Souls Meet Under a Full Moon, of which my favorite book of all time is The Lonely Castle in the Mirror, and this is the same author. So we shall talk about that in the next video. So yeah, I hope you're having a great week or a great day whenever or wherever you're watching. Remember to stay hydrated, and I'll see you in my next video.